The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for the 6th of June, 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,244.49 an ounce, silver $16.41 an ounce, Texas crude $48.62 a barrel, and Bitcoin is still rising at 586 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1536, the commencement of the Mexican Inquisition, an extension of the Spanish Inquisition into the New World from the Spanish conquest of Mexico. It lasted until 1820 with an unknown number of victims. The beginning of the Mexican Inquisition, today in history. In recent news, the IRS has finally released a nearly complete list of the organizations targeted 3 years ago, which numbers in the hundreds, 426 as of now. This is a far higher number than what the Treasury Department's Inspector General believed there were back in May of 2013, when he identified 298 of them. Of course, many of them were different Tea Party Patriot chapters, a group already known to have been affected. However, a lesser-known organization to receive greater scrutiny and lag time on tax-free status recognition was former Congressman Ron Paul's Campaign for Liberty, organizing kickstarted after his drop from his 2008 presidential bid. Along with a joint lawsuit with other groups, the Tea Party Patriots renewed their effort for IRS Commissioner John Koskinen's impeachment, while House Republicans back in May put pressure on the IRS introducing measures to censure the IRS Commissioner and remove him from office without a pension. A study released today by NYU's Langone Medical Center ranked a singer or group's popularity with teenagers and the type of foods and drinks they endorsed, the first nutritional analysis to review dozens of advertisements by music stars over a 14-year period. It found that 79% of the promoted beverages were sugary drinks, high fructose sugary drinks, and 80% of the foods were nutrient deficient. And shockingly, there was no endorsements of fruits, vegetables, or whole grains, with only one food product, pistachios, receiving a healthy score. Also, the study noted that roughly $2 billion a year is spent by food and drink companies on youth-targeted ads. The Lone Star Lowdown is currently looking for sponsors. So you have a product or a service you'd like to advertise with us, feel free to give me a call at 210-363-2257. This is Rick Rohde with your Lowdown for June 6, 2016.
Good friends, good evening and welcome. It is time now for INN World Report Radio here on the Great Logos Radio Network every Tuesday and Thursday night between 6 and 8 p.m. in the Central Time Zone. My name's Tom Kiley. I have the unbelievable good fortune to bring this program to you now in our, I guess I have to go look back. I think we're in our 9th year, coming up on our 9th year any day now. So there you have that. And that is just the radio side of INN World Report. Before that, in between 2002 and 2007, we also did another version, a television version of this program on the Dish Network Free Speech TV channel. So that was very good as well. We've been at it since 2002. That's something like, 14, 15 years now almost. So there you have it. And it's the alternative media, at least my version of it. And I've been producing it, like I said, since 2002 because it just really has to be done. The incredible lack of information, which comes from, I guess, obfuscation from just not reporting it to you or just giving you outright lies, many of them deadly lies, like that little ditty about the weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist in Iraq, just merrily, wholeheartedly cranked out by the corporate mainstream media. There, back in 2000, when the theft of the 2000 election occurred, I really just felt like it had gone far enough with that sort of thing. And so I rolled my sleeves up to get involved in alternative media. I had not done media before that with my partner Lenny Charles in New York and a great crew of people here in New York. And we've been at it ever since. And I'm happy to say that many, many more people have joined us. But, for all of the alternative media venues that I hope you enjoy, there's so many of them out there now. There's so many ways to get information. Not all of them are good. Not all of them are bad. And some of them are great. At least, that your friend Tom here has been at it since 2002, where we did a national television show. Now, that's a big deal. Back in those days, there were very few things like that. Even the great Alex Jones was on radio. He came on to INN back in those days to be interviewed, and we've worked together in the past. And now, of course, he's got not just his radio show, but it's also available on video across the World Wide Web and so forth. But back in those days, it was a kind of a lonely place. And but I'm happy to see that it's progressed. And the alternative media is making a really big difference, clearly, as humanity wakes up. This is perhaps one of the promises of technology and modernization, the fact that communications can improve to the level where we've now been able to produce shows like this, whereas in the past it would have been prohibitively expensive. And speaking of which, a great alternative media warrior, Scott Creighton, who produces the blog American Everyman, will be joining me in about 25 minutes or so. So we're going to hear from Scott. He's going to come in. We have not had Scott on the program for some time. I don't know why. It's just been hard for me to get through to him, but he's been cranking them out. Oh, man. I hope you go there. willieloman.wordpress.com. And we're going to have Scott on. Just an amazing story he put out yesterday or the day before in Puerto Rico, where they had a Democratic primary and Hillary Clinton won I think by 69% or something like that. Well, it turns out that the whole thing is a big sham. There were thousands of polling places in 2008, and this time around there was less than 1,000. And how much you want to bet that those polling places that were, maybe 1/4 of what they had or even less in 2008 were in districts that heavily support Hillary Clinton? How much you want to bet? But no, it's just par for the course right now. By the way, the phone lines will be open here. Let me open them. Phone lines on, just this button here and that button there. Okay. So you can call and join in, 512-646-1984. And, I hope that you appreciate that there is a global insurrection. Humanity is lifting itself, up off the floor. And when I say global, I mean it's, not just on this continent. It's also in Europe and, perhaps South America, because I think they've been at it for a lot longer than we have. But South America, the United States, North America, Canada to an extent, and certainly in Europe, starting with Greece, actually starting with Iceland, and then Greece, and then Spain, and Jeremy Corbyn being elected in England, just a major, major shakeup, elected as head of the Labour Party over there, and elections in Portugal and Ireland. And now it's looking like it's heading towards some bigger places like Italy. But we'll see. Germans are very unhappy with the neoliberal economic disaster that is being forced on everyone and the Ziokan war agenda that is being forced on everyone. And now with these terrible situation with these poor refugees from Syria and elsewhere, Libya, and they're being pushed, they're being dumped on the Europeans. I mean, this serves, I think, several purposes. Number one, I believe it's specifically designed to make the Europeans so upset that all these people are coming there that they're going to want to end the strife in Libya as quickly as possible by urging their politicians to put some kind of boots on the ground or start bombing just to end it. Okay, I think that's number one. Number two, I think that it's just part of a larger, breakdown culture, breakdown societies, breakdown countries. As oligarchy grows beyond first a local thing, and then they control a town or something like that. Then they want to get a region. Then they want to get a country. Then they want to get a continent. Then they want to get the whole world. So nationalism is good for the oligarchs when once they've reached the level of being a king or, a queen, and they've conquered a whole country and they're in a big region, then they want more. So then they're going to go out after it. And then they get nationalism going and say, hey, we have to go get them because they're going to come and get us. And that sort of thing has given nationalism a very bad name because it's been abused. But now that the oligarchs have the nations under control, now they're going to start to get rid of the nations and link them all up. So, for them now, nationalism is a bad thing. So we got the United Nations, we got the European Union, and they're trying to dissolve, break down. It's a lot easier to control masses, large masses of people when you've got them all eaten out of the same hand, when you got them all depending on the same sources for information and governance and security and all the rest of it. So that's what's going on with all of that. So, if you remember how important nationalism was to the oligarchs, just even in perhaps some of your lifetimes or in Vietnam or something. Remember the expression, America, right or wrong? America, love it or leave it. Those are back in the days when nationalism was still a useful tool for the oligarchs. But now they're at the point where, no, it's multi-culti. It's, just forget about it, everything and everybody, and even down to the sex of your body. It's all trying to be mashed up together. And that's what we see going on. And I think that this flood of refugees from the Middle East is all part of that. Get people fighting against each other. They can't focus on the source of their misery, which is the oligarchy above them, the 60 people that own half of the world's wealth, for instance. Break down, loyalties groups. The smallest, I guess, group is the mother and child, the husband and wife, the wife and husband, the father and mother. Those are the smallest groups, and they're under attack, of course. And then you've got the family, a larger group. And then you've got the extended family. Then you've got the community. And then you've got the, the state. And all of these things, which were useful to oligarchs, especially, oligarchs really loved the family, the mother and the father, the mother and the child. They love that when they need bodies to go, fight for them, right? Oh, yeah. I mean, history is replete with this kind of stuff. The Nazis needed lots of bodies. Motherhood was a virtue in Nazi Germany. They needed people. They needed people in the factories. They needed people on their farms. They needed people in their armies, right? As Vladimir Lenin is supposed to have famously said, a bayonet is a tool with a worker at both ends of it, right? So that was the case. But now that they don't need the bodies anymore, they're flipping back to the eugenics agenda, and they want to get rid of them. The worst thing you can do, they don't need you because certainly they don't need you for major war anymore, because they've got nuclear weapons, biological weapons, weather weapons, chemical weapons. All right, they can kill the world 1,000 times over easily. So they don't need so much cannon fodder anymore. They can even, Zbigniew Brzezinski in, I think, 1980, in his famous book Between Two Eras or Between Two Worlds or something like that, said that, hey, you don't even need nuclear anymore. Pretty soon we'll be able to just use the weather as a weapon against a country. We'll burn them out, we'll drought them out, or we'll flood them out, we'll mold them out, we'll wash them out, and they won't even know what hit them. Hello, climate change. Nothing to do with that, is it? This was so serious, by the way. You can look it up, my friends. This is absolutely deadly serious stuff. In the 70s, 75, 78, it was so serious that the United States and the Soviet Union entered into a treaty and agreed not to use weather weapons against each other. They put them sort of in the classification of weapons of mass destruction. There's a treaty on it back in the 70s, all right? How come we don't hear about this anymore? The treaty didn't say anything, however, about a government using these things in their own territory, right? So what exactly is HAARP doing? The high altitude, was it? It's a long name, but the microwave arrays that they have up in Alaska. I think they have one in Puerto Rico as well. What's that all about? That's all about manipulating the weather. What about chemtrails? I now I get the smartphone, so it's got a pretty good camera on it. So I look up, I see my chemtrails over my head in Brooklyn. I take pictures now, and I take video of them being made and laid out. I guess I'll put them all up on a website someday. But we never had that when I was a kid. You didn't have contrails that lasted for all day long, making a broad band across the sky that went wider and wider. Go look up all the John Wayne movies. You see any cowboy movies with that stuff in the sky? No, because it didn't happen back then. 512-646-1984. Give us a call. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio, starting, coming right back just after this.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
All right, good friends. Welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. The phone lines are open. We're going to be joined by Scott Creighton from American Everyman, who's just been, like I say, knocking them out of the park. Of course, he's been doing that for a very long time. So, one second. Just had to tell my little red-nosed pit to be quiet. There, I got a couple of them. So we'll have him back. We'll have him on. First time in a bit now. Let me go take a look here. Willie Loman. HMAN.com, I think it is. .wordpress.word. Let's see if that's it. No, it's not. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll have to get the right spelling for you. But anyhow, great article about how in Puerto Rico, the DNC in Puerto Rico just played horrible games with the voting. Anyway, I talk about this global insurrection. Let's see how it's going to go. It depends on you joining it, I think. If you've been listening to this program and programs like it for some time, you've been prepping for it. There's no question about that. But it's getting to be time for action now. It's beginning, there's I don't want action if it's ill-informed action. I'd rather have people do nothing than, do something terrible. There's many examples about this. A scalpel is a great tool in the hands of a qualified, trained surgeon, but it's a horrible thing in the hands of a child who doesn't know how to use it. So I think that's what certainly I've been trying to do, trying to gain the knowledge myself. It's like an open university, this program. We get great guests on the show, people talking about it. There's so many people now around the world that are focusing, right, on different aspects that you can't cover. And, you can search and find so many great angles, people working on things, right? And so you don't have to work so hard. Maybe you like it. Maybe you can collate it. There's a lot of people, a good friend of mine, John in Austin, who just collates. He gets great articles from all around the world, and people send him stuff. I send him stuff, and he puts out a tip sheet every day. Now he's got a blog, I believe. I don't know if I can tell you exactly what it is. Maybe we'll have him on the show. But it's having an effect. People are going around the miserable state of education that the oligarchs have bought and paid for with their control of the textbooks and the curriculum and the classroom and all the rest of it. And we're educating ourselves. There's still good people out there. There's always been good people out there doing research, but it's like a tree falling in the forest. If nobody's there to hear it, it's not going to make any sound. And that's why we produce alternative media. We're trying to allow the sound of all of these great people to be heard. And it's working. It's absolutely working. And people are waking up. And it's manifesting itself right now, like I said, with these different insurgent political movements and political figures. Here in the States, it's Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Much more Donald Trump than Sanders as far as distance from the establishment is concerned. But it's fascinating to me to watch. And give me a call. Tell me what you think, 512-646-1984. Absolutely fascinating to watch that this how shall we say, boa constrictor, which has slowly wrapped itself around American democracy, such as it's ever been, the news media, the educational system, slowly. It has to go slowly so that you don't notice it happening. But then you wake up and you realize, oh my gosh, it's all lies. It's all phony baloney. There's ample proof all over the place. Look at your condition. Tell me you're better off than you were 20 years ago if you're that old, or your family, or your trajectory. Garbage. Absolutely garbage. Are you kidding me? I did not serve in the U.S. military to fight and defend a system where young adults come out of college $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 in debt. Are you kidding me? And this is only in the last 10 years or so now? Are you kidding me? What? Why? Because they're hoping they're going to get some great job that doesn't exist anymore to pay it all off? It's obscene. It's obscene. How come we've allowed this obscene situation to develop and fester and just leer at us? It's leering at us. I don't care if you're right wing, left wing. This is our country. This is our children. This is our society. This isn't a right or a left thing. How did this happen? How did we allow this to happen? Since when are institutions of higher education supposed to be businesses that have to run at a profit? What? No, the profit is in an educated population that can serve the community, that can serve the country. Remember John Kennedy, the guy they killed? Remember what he said? Don't ask what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Ask what you can do for your community, for your people. Those are great words. And they killed him, of course, for those and many other great words. I was just looking at a video yesterday. Noam Chomsky, Gnome, as Webster Tarpley calls him, Gnome Chomsky, very well revered by a lot of people on the left. And I suppose at one time he was very useful during the Vietnam era. But now he's either just riding on his laurels, going dotty in the head, or maybe even worse, maybe somebody got to him. But the nuts, the crazy stuff he's talking about nowadays. There was an interviewer, a young woman interviewing him, and she asked him about conspiracy theorists. Oh, yeah. Well, no, there are some conspiracies, but most of the time these conspiracy theories have no merit. Like what? Like the JFK. Oh, so he's going to tell us how the JFK, the theory about the conspiracy, that there was a conspiracy to kill President Kennedy. He's going to tell us why that has no merit. And you know what his answer is, why that has no merit, Gnome Chomsky? Because John Kennedy tends to be in the minds of people this great idealistic guy, and actually he was quite a war hawk who brought us to the brink of nuclear annihilation. And that's it. That's his proof that there was no conspiracy to kill John Kennedy, because he erroneously, in my opinion, says that Kennedy was not that great of a president, and people have lionized him and made him out to be something much greater. Okay. Frankly, he's the funniest war hawk I've ever seen. If that's the case, this is the man who diffused the Cuban Missile Crisis when the war was on the brink of nuclear annihilation. If he wanted nuclear annihilation, he had it. And his generals like Curtis E. LeMay, the rat bastard who bombed the Japanese and just burned out the Japanese civilians in a huge war crime. But, of course, we're never going to get prosecuted for that because we won. They were pushing him. Lyman Lemnitzer, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they hated John Kennedy. They wanted to drag him into a war with Cuba. And he kept it from happening. Gnome Chomsky, the man who brought us to the brink of nuclear annihilation. No. You're very wrong, Mr. Chomsky, and you should know better. And I'm sure you do. So why are you equivocating, prevaricating? The same John Kennedy, guess what he did? He was so terrified about the idea of poison in the atmosphere, testing nuclear weapons, coming down, radiation fallout, that he pushed for and signed the nuclear test ban treaty 42 days before they killed him. That's a guy who's bringing us to the edge of nuclear annihilation. Same thing with 9/11. He says, the main theory of 9/11, that there was a conspiracy, just doesn't hold up. If it was a conspiracy and the Bushes were involved, then why would they pick the Saudis to do it? Their friends, the Saudis. Why would they pick the Saudis to do it? They wanted to go to war with Iraq. Why didn't they pick the Iraqis? That's his proof that there was no conspiracy behind the events of 9/11. Excuse me, what price have the Saudis paid yet? Maybe there's going to be one finally because of the 28 pages. But that doesn't hold water, Mr. Chomsky. The Saudis didn't get any trouble. The Iraqis got in tons of trouble and didn't even have to be blamed for 9/11 and got murdered. Okay? The fact is the trauma was required of 9/11 to be able to get people so crazy that they wouldn't even notice you were going after the wrong people. Plus the lie of the weapons of mass destruction that was served up to you on a platter by your news media. Same people who told you Russia invaded the Crimea, which they didn't do. We'll be right back, hopefully with Scott Creighton.
Remember Madonna's hit song, Express Yourself? Well, the Material Girls anthem turns out to be very good advice for couples. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back to tell you why in just a moment.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Comedian Phyllis Diller might have been onto something when she joked, "Never go to bed mad, stay up and fight." Researchers at the University of Michigan studied marital conflict in 197 couples over 17 years. Couples where both partners suppressed their anger over unfair attacks were twice as likely to die earlier than couples where at least one partner expressed their anger. Professor Ernest Harburg, the lead author of the study, says couples should identify healthy ways to handle their conflicts and work them through to resolution. He warns that couples who bury their anger, brood on it, and resent their partners are setting themselves up for trouble and shorter lives. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Why underground?
right, good friends, welcome back. Now, our good friend Scott Creighton is not with us yet, and he warned me he may not be on right at 7:30. He's working on his car, and he said he has going to have gas all over him, so he wants to clean up. So he may be on shortly. I'm not sure. So we're going to continue, but I hope you give me a call, 512-646-1984. Come on, call in, especially if you haven't called in for a while, especially if you've never called in, especially if you're a longtime listener who've never called in. How about if you're a new listener who hasn't called yet? Let's get some feedback going. And the ladies, we don't hear enough from the women out there. And, that's very important too. I like to think that we talk about issues that concern thinking people, not thinking men or thinking women, but thinking people. And so let's hear 512-646-1984. What topic do you want to talk about? Maybe I should just be quiet and not say anything until somebody calls and suggests a topic. Wouldn't that be funny? Or interesting, I should say. Anyway, I'll continue while I'm waiting for somebody to call. The insurgency, such as it is manifesting here in these United States with Donald Trump, how do you like my analogy? Think of it, friends, as a prize fight. And better than that, think of it as a series of prize fights. In the fighting world, it's a series of events. You've got the champion, and the champion is always being challenged. So in that sense, it's like a series, right? And maybe you've seen On the Waterfront, maybe you know the stories, but there's a lot of money involved. The mob used to be involved. And, there's a lot of betting involved. So a lot of times these fights were fixed, were rigged. Sometimes it happens in other sports events as well. The famous Black Sox scandal, right, where sports figures are paid to underperform. It's kind of hard to pay somebody to overperform, but, it's easy to pay them to underperform. And and therefore you create this phony reality where it looks like a fight. It looks like it's going to be legit, and it's not. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Is Scott joining us? No, I don't think so. Okay. Oh, good. Julian's on the line. Great. I'll be right with Julian. I just want to say, though, that's the world that we live in. It's a rigged game. It's a rigged fight. And the reason why it doesn't seem so obvious to us is because it is so extensive. And there are so many bought-off people involved. In the rig fight, you got the bought-off fighters, of course. You got their whole teams that are bought off, their management that's bought off. You've got the ref, oftentimes, who's bought off. Okay? You've got the announcer who's bought off. You don't want an announcer who's going to accidentally, not be with the program and announce the wrong thing that the guy, is not down for the count. And oftentimes the sports announcers are in on it too. That's the same thing. Okay. And it's very extensive. It's your nightly news. It's your political parties. And it's these elections. And what happens in that sealed system is that all the punches that are being thrown are phony. They don't really land punches on people. So you don't have to be a good politician. You don't have to be a good politician with a solid record for humanity, for this country, for the middle class, for the underclass who aspire to join the middle class, okay? You don't have to have a good record because no one's going to challenge you on it. And even Bernie Sanders wasn't really landing punches on Hillary Clinton at first. He's starting to now. Donald Trump, the bull in the china shop, the guy who's not in on it. All the other wannabes on stage, 16, 17 of them, they can only go so far, but they won't throw real punches. Do you think did you ever dream you would hear anybody, right or left, Republican or Democrat, stand up in national television and say, George W. Bush lied about the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? That's the truth. But you're not allowed to say it. That's a pulled punch. So you don't have to be a politician who could take a punch like that because it's never going to be thrown. So you got the liars and you got the crappy candidates like Hillary Clinton, who's got a jaw of glass. She's got so many problems. One truthful conversation with her, she could be gone. All right. Donald Trump's not part of it. If for nothing else, he deserves thanks for pointing all this out. Anyway, let's talk with Julian. A great call. You can be next. 512-646-1984. Hi, Julian. Are you there? One more time. I'm sorry that my computer's a little slow. Come on, computer. Let's go. I'm going to try one more time, Julian. I pressed the button and nothing happens. There we go. No. Now we got to do it one more time. Sorry. It's just a slow machine tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Are you able to hear me?
Now I can, yes.
Okay,
how are you?
Good. I'm good. Glad to be talking with you.
Always glad to hear you and know that you're out there listening to the show. What would you like to talk about tonight, Julian?
Well, this evening here, I'm about to go to a function about why is the middle class shrinking. And so I'm heading to this place right now to discuss it. And anyway, I'm glad this is going to be going on. And anyway, but with regard to you making reference to, I mean, there's so much I don't even hardly know where to begin. Like about 2 weeks ago, I was hearing someone say that might have been on your show that they were going to give Hillary the announcement that she was going to be the presumptive candidate before the California primary. And there you go. It happened today. They're doing that to
That was our good friend Joe Calhoun, who was on the show, that said that.
Yep. Demoralize Bernie Sanders people. I'm with you on some of the stuff on Trump. I know Tarpley's been just ripping him, but he's been useful for many things. If he got help get rid of Jeb Bush out of the race, that was great. No doubt about it.
I think Webster and I have a big disagreement about Trump, and he was here in New York at the Left Forum a couple of weeks ago, and I went to a couple of his talks, and some of his people were getting on my case about it. But that's okay.
Yeah. So that point's going on. I heard Mitch McConnell correcting Trump today about being on point and stop with some of the stuff he said about the judge that has the Mexican heritage. But anyway, just point after point. I'm always glad to hear you talk about oligarchy because people don't understand the old puppet masters behind the scenes doing stuff. We're not going to be able to overcome them.
Well, that's right. You got to pull the curtain back and look at what's behind the scenes. The Wizard of Oz, and it's a very small group of people, a very incestuous group of people, a very ill group of people, and they don't want the spotlight on them because people would be shocked to know just how small of a group they are. So they own the spotlight and they point it in your eyes.
Right. One of the things that woke me up back in 1989, the awakening that I had, and maybe you're familiar with the book, it was Billions for the Bankers, the Debts to the People. And that was, little Sheldon Emery, this minister, wrote that. Maybe you heard of it. And
I've heard of the book, yes. I have not read it, though.
On the back of it, there was a picture of this guy with his dog hunting, and the dogs were chasing up a tree. All actually producers, manufacturers and various people that actually did stuff, electricians and various things, actually did something useful. And then they had the tree that, the bankers should have been actually being barked up and they're being left alone. So something to that effect.
Yeah, no, it's, making money off of money instead of off of real stuff and off of production. And then, of course, creating the money out of nothing and then charging it back to us is just absolutely insane. What do you think? Are there any lawyers listening out there? Could we have a class action RICO suit against the Federal Reserve for racketeering? Wouldn't that be a good one, Julian?
That'd be real good. We definitely need to, as you use the word, nationalize. Yeah, let's get the bank to be a United States bank again and no more Federal Reserve.
Well, I say deprivatize because it's a national function to begin with, always was, and it was privatized. And they've invested a lot of negative.
Easy.
Welcome back. We just had Julian on the line. We're waiting for Scott Creighton. He's working on his car. I know that. So maybe it's taking him a little bit longer to get himself degreased. But in the meantime, that's okay because you can call in too. Julian, a great caller. Come on, all y'all. What about Scottish John? I know John's out there usually listening, hopefully, and so many other great callers that we have. And what if you haven't called in before? Let's get some feedback here. What do you think? Am I off base? I'm coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. I know many of you are listening in Austin, Texas, which is a wonderful place. And I'm trying to get out there. I've been having some issues in the last couple of years, but I will return, and we'll have a party or something. But I am so thankful that you all are out there and are so open-minded. And I must say, in the 8+ years now that I've been doing this program, I've learned a great deal from you, the INN World Report listening audience. I hope it's mutual. I hope that you've learned a few things I won't say from me, because whatever I've talked about is stuff that I've learned myself by reading and, communicating with people who've done research and so forth. So, I'm fortunate I could put it together and hopefully make it sound interesting by, putting it all together, mixing it all up and putting it back out there. But it must be interesting, entertaining. It's actually, it's quite a joy, to be fighting the good fight. The truth, virtue is its own reward, famous expression. But the truth is a very, very wonderful thing. Hard to define, obviously, but we all know what it is. And, there's a quality, I think, to the truth that runs right through everything, and most especially through our lives. And the more truthful we are with ourselves, each other, our world, our communities, nature, the more optimal everything goes, and the better everything is, and the more harmonious things are, and the better things go for us. And if we try to be untruthful, well, we may appear to be getting some temporary gain out of it, or it may appear to be getting a long-term gain out of it. But no, it only brings suffering, first to the people who are the object of the untruth, and secondly, eventually, of course, always to the people who are the source of the untruth. And that's for sure. And the bigger the truth that you strive to go with and work with and protect, okay, the more amazing it'll be. When, we all know about the truth and not telling lies and so forth, but when corrupt power depends on untruth, all right, to varying degrees, it gets more and more desperate to keep that untruth propped up, and it'll go to very desperate measures, even killing people, right? And in that, and my greatest example of that I can tell you about is the example of Jesus Christ, for instance, right? Look what he went through by the people who were trying to prevent the truth, by the people who were profiting from untruth. On a very smaller level, that happens every day to a lot of people. People working at a newspaper have to make a decision. Am I going to tell this story the way it really is, or am I going to lose my job? Now, the way the story has been handed down, I wasn't there. I have to trust, a lot of the accounts of it and so forth. But as I understand it, Jesus Christ was talking what he said was the truth, and he could have spared his own life at any minute by trouncing or trashing that truth, and he didn't do it. He fought for the truth, and come what may. And when we do that ourselves on our own level, especially when it begins to become precarious or, dangerous to our livelihood, maybe, or what have you, or worse, it's not like you're fighting for something that everybody can see clearly. People have a good idea what you're talking about, but they can't. It's not like somebody being beaten up in the street where everybody can see it. When the truth gets beaten up, it's rarely, or raped, it's rarely done in a way that people can see it very clearly. But when you step in, when you put yourself into the breach and try to defend the truth when it's being raped, it's a powerful, powerful, powerful thing. And amazing things will happen to you and in your world if you do that. It's just the way it works. It's as if the universe smiles upon that. Now, you can get religious, you can get theocratic, you can get what's the word I'm looking for? You could put this in a theistic context or not, But either way, there's a harmony to the universe that goes along with truth. It flows on truth, and when we regard that, even though it's inconvenient, sometimes there's whole powerful structures, and that's for me that's demonic, right? That would be an easy way. It doesn't have to be some big devil with horns. It could just be somebody who's fighting to suppress the truth. But we certainly have an awful lot of that. And our mainstream media is a good example. They get so far out there, they begin to believe their own lies after a while and their own stuff. There's so many examples. Of course, the weapons of mass destruction, we know that was a lie. You've heard Scott Ritter on this program, the man who took all the weapons out of Iraq, saying that he tried to warn Hillary Clinton. He tried to warn the media. Of course, he was on INN World Report before the invasion of Iraq, and he warned the INN World Report audience, and he was absolutely correct. And then they came after him. They came after Scott Ritter and tried to shut him down, and they did, I think, effectively for a while. But thank goodness he's back on the scene now. So, there's plenty of examples. Here's another one. How about Russia's invasion of the Crimea? Them's fighting words, okay? That's war talk being uttered by people who are never going to pay the price physically, never going to get the blood splattered on them. And I think of Rachel Maddow, the icon from MSNBC on the left, and she's said that many times. Russia's invasion of the Crimea. And you've heard me say it on this program. It's just another war talk, deadly lie, okay? Trying to get a war going. The Crimea belonged to Russia for hundreds of years. Nikita Khrushchev, who I'm told may actually have come from the Crimea, came from the Ukraine, gave the Crimean Peninsula, it's a big piece of land sticking out in the Black Sea, gave it to the Russian state of the Ukraine, just gave it to them. Didn't ask the Russian people who lived there, hey, would you like to be broken off of Mother Russia and become part of the Ukrainian state? Didn't ask them. Didn't have to. It was the Soviet Union. He decided they had to go along with it. It would be like, what? It would be like taking Long Island, New York, where I was born, 114 miles long, and just breaking it off of New York State and giving it to Connecticut. Connecticut's right across the water. It's right next to it. You know what? We're just going to, the president makes a decision someday. I'm going to give Long Island to Connecticut. I don't care what the Long Islanders think. That's what happened with the Crimea. But, of course, it is a strategic location for the Russians. It's their only access to the warm waters of the Mediterranean. All of their other naval facilities are up north where it's cold and ice is over in the winter. This is a warm water navy. It goes out to the Mediterranean through the Bosphorus, the Dardanelles there by Turkey, Istanbul, Constantinople, as it used to be called. Excuse me. And that's been the prize for the Anglo-American oligarchs for a long time. Take that away from Russia. So it was given to the Ukraine, and then they took control of the Ukrainian government with this horrible, horrible coup. And they thought they had it. They're going to put puppets in charge of the Ukraine who did what they were told by the Anglo-American oligarchs, and now they could kick the Russians out of the Crimean Peninsula, and the Russians would be denied a warm water port. Well, the Crimean people who are basically Russian, it would be like the people on Long Island saying, you know what, Connecticut's screwed up. We don't want to be with them anymore. We want to go back to New York. And they had an election, and it was overwhelming. More than 90% of the Crimeans said, yes, we want to go back to where we came from, to Russia. And that was it. Now, there was a large military facility there in Sevastopol, right? The naval base. There's an Air Force base there. I'm sure they have some soldiers there too. I don't know, 26,000 or something like that. Major military facility. They've been there for years, by contract, by agreement, just like the United States is in Japan by contract, in Germany by contract, and all over the world, the Philippines, everywhere. Just like we're everywhere, the Russian military was in the Crimea by agreement with the Ukrainian government. It was not an invasion. It was there for decades. That's a lie, Rachel Maddow. You know better. And all the other people on the right and Fox that say the same thing, Russia's invasion of the Crimea. Because you don't get to talk back to them and challenge them, so they can just lie. Unfortunately, their lies are deadly. They're heading toward World War III. But they won't pay the price. They got a nice bunker somewhere. It's you and your kids that are going to be killing Russian people who have kids too. Anyway, Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. Scott Creighton was supposed to be with us. But hopefully he'll be back. I'm not sure about my clock, so we maybe get cut off. So why don't I just sit back and enjoy the music? We'll be right back on the other side of this break.
Here's to you, my love, with blessings from above.
good, friends. Welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. Hour number 2 just getting underway here tonight. And as promised, we're joined now by Scott Creighton, the power behind the really, really good blog. I hope you go there. If you don't, you should, really. American Everyman. It's willieloman.wordpress.com. Scott, it's been too long, man. Welcome back to INN.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom. Good to be back.
Look, I'm going to give you a pass because you've been working overtime. You've been cranking out great information, so maybe that's why you haven't been on the show for a while. But I tell you, you just keep going at it, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. I don't know where to begin. There's so much to talk about. What's it? The New Jersey primary going on right now, the California primary going on right now, the coronation of the Red Queen Hillary Clinton going on right now. What's going on?
She's ascending to the throne, I guess. She's rising from the dead, like she came out of a cave from being there 3 days, and now she's taking the throne, I guess. It's kind of scary, but I guess we all had to expect it. I mean, it's they have really been rigging this election. I hate to go into the conspiracy theories right off the bat, but they have been hijacking this half of the election for months now. So we all know this was coming. We all saw it coming.
Well, and despite all of their best efforts, they were unable to hijack the other half, huh?
That's true. I think that in a large sense, the same people weren't running the other side, and I think that to be honest with you, I really at the beginning I called the other side for Jeb Bush right off the bat. I thought the whole point of Donald Trump was to serve as a foil for Jeb Bush, and he would be the responsible, the reasonable candidate, and eventually everybody would formulate or get behind Jeb Bush, the reasonable guy, even though nobody really wanted another Bush in the White House. But
he was going to be the ideal backdrop for Hillary's ascension to the throne.
Yes,
or make it look like it was a contest,
or she was going to be the ideal backdrop, the scary Hillary monster out there to get him in the throne. Either way, it didn't really matter. I think the CEO of Goldman Sachs once said about 7 months ago, Bush, Clinton, it didn't matter to him as long as it was one of them. So.
Right, exactly. It was a hedge fund, the whole election. Right.
So I kind of that's what I thought to begin with. But he was just so people couldn't get behind him, and when he stood up on stage and people actually listened to him, he's I hate to say it, but he was less likable than George W. Bush, and he seems like he's less intelligent than George W. Bush. So I mean, people they said no, and he's a Bush. We don't want anything to do with this guy, and a lot of people started getting behind Trump. The whole thing is right across the board. On both sides of the fake political divide, the one-party system we have right now, people want something different. They want something completely different than what they have, and the establishment's just determined they're not going to get it. Well,
I think, if I may embellish on what you just said, they're waking up to the fact that they don't have something different with the two parties. Okay? Right. I think that it's been very much, red state, blue jersey, red jersey, shirts and skins, whatever you want to call it, and people have gone along with that, and it started to sputter with the Clintons, I think, really. I mean, majorly. It's been in trouble for a long time. I think it goes back to Reagan, actually probably back to the killing of Kennedy. But it's been sputtering. The Democrats held the Congress for 45 years after World War II. I mean, from the 30s, right? There was a real difference between the parties back in those days. Then you had the Southern strategy, all the rest of it. But slowly, and I said earlier, like a boa constrictor, it doesn't just jump in your face and become, it's boiling frogs. Slowly, there's absolutely no difference between the parties. It's the perpetual war, and people are finally waking up to that because it's hitting them now. The empire is turning in on itself and sucking the life out of its own people now. So people are starting to wake up to that whole thing. And as I also said before, and I'd like to get your take on this, it's like a fixed fight. I used the metaphor of the fixed prize fight, which actually is that, it's a series of fights. The champ has to take on many contenders, and then at a certain point they decide they need a new champ and they fix a new fight. But, no real punches are thrown. So you can be a lousy candidate like Hillary Clinton. You can be a lousy candidate like Jeb Bush. You never have to worry about taking a real hit. Okay. And then comes the brawler. Donald Trump was not part of the game, and he smashes them all right in the face and they all crumble.
Well, but Donald Trump is part of the game. Donald Trump is currently saying things that he knows are going to be misinterpreted, and they are being misinterpreted, but he doubles down on them. He doesn't say, listen, what I tried to say was this one individual judge has a bias towards me. Instead, he goes on and say, well, maybe, because he is Mexican, and he allows the left to jump and harp on that. Then he triples down. He doubles down on it saying, well, maybe a Muslim couldn't give me a fair trial. And then he says, well, I guess a woman couldn't give me a fair trial either. He's doing it on purpose. He's not that stupid. He was supposed to be a foil. In my opinion, he was supposed to be a foil for Jeb Bush. I got that 100% wrong. I think he was, but the people on the right decided they liked what he was saying because he knows how to talk to people. He knows how to present
people
himself.
on the right? What people on the right? Not the intelligentsia. No,
the people.
Well, okay, but it's not just the people on the right. It's also a lot of Democrats too.
There are some Democrats who, and there are some independents. Don't forget, the independents are big right now. I mean, a lot of people don't identify as either being Republican or Democrat anymore. But here's what I'm saying. There are real punches being thrown
for the first time in ages.
Well, not necessarily by him. And I'm gonna detract from my own previous position on this 7 months ago. When I was a big Bernie Sanders fan over the last couple of years. He's on the left. I'm on the left. You obviously know that. Some of your listeners probably know. They figured that out by now. But he was in the Congress. He was in the Senate saying things that needed to be said way back when, and he absolutely not only refused to vote for the war in Iraq or the illegal invasion and occupation of Iraq, but he got out on the Senate floor and he spoke out passionately about it. And I've been a fan of his ever since. I like what he stands for in that regard. So I'm not a Bernie Sanders hater. But about 6 or 7 months ago, it occurred to me that what this guy is going to end up doing is probably just kind of sheepdogging for Hillary Clinton, and I know a lot of people feel the same way.
I feel that way. He didn't throw any real punches. He's starting to flail.
No, wait.
He's starting to flail a little bit now. Go ahead.
Wait, let me finish. That's not a little bit. That's a lot. And I believe this wholeheartedly. And if you look at my website, you go back and look over the months and months. I covered some of his stuff, but I didn't really cover a lot of it. But I did tear apart Hillary Clinton. I did tear apart these different Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush to some degree, a little bit, Donald Trump, but he's doing it himself. And
get out of the way, let him do it himself. Right.
So really, if you know my website, my big target of opportunity is Hillary Clinton because she is diabolical. She is she's vile. She shouldn't. I'm on the left, and I'm saying that right now. She's completely vile, and there's no way this person should be president. Let me just toss that out there. But let's talk about what Bernie Sanders did. Now, I, of course, started off saying he was going to be a sheepdog. He's going to drive him back in, and that was a whole point. And if he was actually doing that, and this is my belief, it's only my belief, but if he was actually doing that, he would have gotten out about a month ago. He would have gotten out about a month ago after Hillary Clinton announced that they weren't going to spend another nickel in California. They weren't going to spend any more in New Jersey. They were going to focus entirely, remember that? They were going to focus entirely on Trump. And what has happened? Here's the punch. The punch is that she's not only had to spend money and go back to California and do all these rallies with 50 people, at least to make it look like they're doing something there to justify the theft that's going to take place today, right now, in the electronic voting machines that's going on. But here's the real thing. This is how this is the real pain for her. This is the punch. He is, by staying in it and by pushing it all the way to the end, he is forcing them to steal this election. And that's bad. That's dangerous. That is extremely dangerous for the establishment on the Democratic side and the Republican side. They didn't use it this time, but we do know about 2000 and 2004. We do know about Karl Rove and the George Bush days. The last thing they want to do is have their trick exposed. And Bernie Sanders, by sticking it out, is forcing them to do it. Look at what happened in Arizona. Look at what happened in New York. Look at what happened in Rhode Island.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico is even worse.
Tell everybody. I was talking about your article about Puerto. Tell people briefly about what the hell they pulled in Puerto Rico.
Do we have time before the next thing?
Yeah, we got 3 minutes. Go ahead, and then we can continue after.
Briefly, listen, we were all up in arms in 2000 when 54,000 people were disenfranchised in Florida. We know what happened in Ohio when the Attorney General, or whoever the guy's name was, actually was a Bush supporter, and he was in charge of counting the votes, and he actually stole Ohio in 2004 for George W. Bush, making sure he stayed in. What happened in Puerto Rico blows them all out of the water. In 2008, the last time there was a contested primary, there were 388,000 votes cast. Hillary Clinton won, got 200 and something, 280 something. Obama got like 100 and something, whatever it was. 388,000 votes.
And how many polling stations?
2,300, roughly. Okay. This past Sunday, there were 420 polling stations. And right now, I just checked it again. Right now, there's still only 69% of the vote in, and the total is 68,000. Compare that to what happened in 2008. 380, that's 320,000 less votes, and they're still at 69% as far as the official tally. They're just not even going to bother counting them anymore. This is completely stolen. It is what happened in Puerto Rico is just it boggles the mind. It makes Ohio in 2004 and Florida in 2000 look like Sesame Street. It's unbelievable.
Well, you did it in well less than 3 minutes. And the reason is because the old black magic ain't working anymore. Okay. So now they have to, as you say, they have to do this crap out in the open.
But see, if Bernie had backed out, he had an easy way to go. He gave it a good shot. He could always say, well, look at the optics, look at the math. The math just simply isn't there. And he could have walked away, and he would have been, a hero on the left. He would have had a nice cushy thing going on when he went back to the Senate. But he stuck it out. Now, what he ends up doing tomorrow or next week after Washington's primary, I don't know. He's probably going to end up, saying, yeah, well, we lost. We gave it a shot. Who knows what he's going to say?
Sheepdog extraordinaire at that point.
Yes.
Now, hold on one second, Scott. Listen, if he could drag this thing out this far, this long, okay, now he's throwing some real punches. Had he done that from day one, okay, he probably could have knocked her out, okay? But no, he's dragging it out. Now he got religion at the end. Hold on, friends. We're speaking with Scott Creighton. As you can hear, it's just getting warmed up. We'll be right back with him just after this.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
Listen, there's so many great people out there involved in alternative media in so many forms: radio, television, print, and internet. And we're talking with one of them right now, Scott Creighton. His blog is willieloman.wordpress.com. It's called American Everyman. I hope you go there. Scott, I don't know how you do it, man, but you're very persistent. And, I don't agree with all your perspectives, but on balance, it's certainly lots of good food for thought and very good research oftentimes as well. We were just talking about Bernie Sanders. And first of all, with Bernie Sanders, I think that he's pretty decent on American policy, domestic policy. I'm not impressed with him much at all on foreign policy. His idea of
I agree.
Cleaning up the Middle East is getting the Saudis to be more involved. Yo, Bernie, Bernie, baby.
They're already involved.
If the Saudis are any more involved, they will be doing security at your events, okay? For God's sakes, okay? So that's a joke, a bad joke. But and I think Donald Trump is better than all of them put together on foreign policy. He's got an issue. I don't agree with all of that either. I think he's wrong-headed on Iran, for instance. But domestically, Bernie Sanders, okay. Now, he comes in here, and he doesn't go for the jugular with Hillary. I think all of this email stuff is garbage. We shouldn't be looking at this email stuff. And, I care about the middle class of this country. He could, she is such a fragile candidate. And we're talking about this whole thing is all rigged. Of course, in a rigged system, you can be a crappy candidate like Jeb Bush or like Hillary Clinton because you don't have to worry about taking a punch. And then somewhere along the line, Bernie got religion. And the people, by the way, are way out ahead of Bernie Sanders. They're ahead of Donald Trump. Okay, right. The people, and then somewhere along the line, Trump and Sanders caught up with the people and said, "Holy mackerel, there's a movement here."
Well, now let's get back to. I completely agree with you on his foreign policy. Not only did he, not stand in the way of Hillary Clinton while she was pushing to go bomb the heck out of Libya, a country that did nothing to us, and enforce a regime change.
You mean like all the rest of them?
Right. And force a regime change on a man who was not, in fact, attacking and killing his own people. It wasn't a humanitarian intervention. It was a neoliberal regime change. And she did it for business interest here in the United States, business interest in France, business interest in England.
I think she also did it to make her bones mafia style and show the big boys that she could be president.
Right. Well, she wants to, get as many of the smaller ones because, George W. Bush and Dick Cheney got, a big one. They got Iraq. They got Iraq and they got Afghanistan. So they got a couple biggies. Well, they can't, afford really a couple more biggies right now because the only real biggie left would be North Korea maybe and certainly Iran. And they weren't about to pick that fight. She tried. She tried the Green Revolution, and it failed. But so I agree. She's making her bones. She's working her way up the corporate bureaucratic ladder of the government these days, or whatever you want to call the government these days. But Bernie Sanders could have been certainly stronger in stepping up and standing up and saying, we can't have this. And he didn't. He didn't step up for Libya like he stepped up for Iraq. And I hold him accountable for that. And that's one of the big problems I had with him 7 months ago. And
Syria too, right?
He has not been. He's called Assad a dictator, an evil dictator. He's used the same language. But again, remember, this is a guy who has screamed at his own people at an event someplace because they were trying to hold him accountable, saying, look, 500 kids are dead right now in Palestine and Gaza, and no one's saying anything, and the bombs are, and he's screaming at them, shut up, shut up. Israel has a right to defend themselves. That's where he was, 4 years ago.
Israel has every right to defend itself.
Oh, he was. You
want my Carl Sagan? That's a little
Bernie call.
A little Bernie. Go ahead.
Bernie call. But now let's look at. He keeps saying he's pulling the Democratic Party to the left. I think his people are pulling him to the real left because when everybody was rushing off to the AIPAC conference or confab or whatever they had, Hillary was there, of course, and Trump was there, or whoever. Everybody else shows up there. He's the only one who doesn't go. And in fact, he sends a videotape message. And in the videotape message, he basically says, look, there's no way to achieve a peace deal without looking at both sides and saying both sides have a right to exist and both sides are people. And you have to look at them as people. He's talking about Palestinians, of course. Hillary goes there and she's talking about talking to AIPAC. She never once uses the word Palestine. So he's been pulled a little bit to the left. He has moved a little bit to the real left that we'd like to see him, but certainly not far enough. So yeah, his foreign policy leaves a lot to be desired, especially when he says Saudi Arabia needs more involvement. He doesn't realize these Wahhabists and these Salafists are Saudis.
It's a riot. Yeah, you're making my point. It's the people who are pulling Trump along and pulling Sanders along, okay? Right. And they're trying to ride that wave. They didn't create it, okay? And you know what? If they don't serve that wave, they're going to be discarded and they'll find somebody else.
Well,
mark my words.
Here's part of what I wrote today, and that yes, we have to accept the fact that on the left side of this thing, the election is going to be stolen. Primary is being stolen. It's already been stolen. And it's going to happen again today as soon as they start releasing the information on New Jersey and certainly in California. Because the mainstream media decided back on May 5th, we're not going to do any more exit polls in Kentucky, Jersey, and California because there was this thing called Exit Poll Gate, and it was a big thing and a growing thing on Twitter, and people were starting to look at the exit polls going, wow, look at the discrepancy between the exit polls and the actual vote counts in these primaries. And when they're really off, guess what? They're always really off in the favor of Hillary Clinton, and she wins those states. When they're within the parameters they're supposed to be, it's a Bernie Sanders state, and the exit polls reflect what they're supposed to reflect.
You know why?
So they just canceled the exit polling.
But the reason for that is that you're going to get a more honest answer oftentimes from an honest person. You know, there is a little bit of lying that happens in exit polls if there's race involved or gender. Sometimes they don't want to sound like a racist.
If exit polls weren't efficient and if they weren't an accurate way of determining how the voting was going, they wouldn't be doing exit polls over the last 60, 70 years.
That's right, and they're now inconvenient.
And in fact, we wouldn't be using exit polls in other countries in order to determine whether or not we say they're free and fair elections.
Exactly, when we send Jimmy Carter over. But listen, to your point, and Scott's from Florida, folks, here, back me up here, Palm Beach 2000, okay? A person can actually, regarding their intent when they voted, which is in the law in Florida, that's the thing. It's not whether you filled out the ballot properly, if your intent can be determined. An exit poll for somebody in Palm Beach was more accurate in their intent than what they may have actually voted when they had that stupid cross-eyed ballot, where they thought they were voting for A and they were actually voting for B. So that's how deadly exit polls are. You're going to get what the person wanted to vote for, whether or not their vote was ever counted or whether or not they were tricked into voting it some other way. That's why they had to get rid of the exit polls.
That's why they had to get rid of the exit polls, especially when you've got electronic voting machines flipping the votes. Now, there was an interesting thing. If you go back on my website about maybe a week and a half ago, there was a study done. I think it was, it was Illinois. And they had what they have to do after they take a primary is take 5% of the electronic voting machines from the whole thing, put them in a room, and then those 5% they have to run tests on with the software that they had in during the primary. And there's this big hearing going on at the election board in Chicago, because they had held this thing in Chicago, and they have all of these people who came to witness this. You can come. It's open to the public if you want to come. You can't record it, but you can take notes. All these people stood up one after another saying, listen, of all these machines, like 75, 80% of these things, they put in 50 ballots for Bernie and 25 ballots for Hillary, and the official tally was 50 for Hillary and 25 for Bernie, something along those lines. The point they were saying is the way they audited the machines, they didn't go, oh my God, there's something wrong with these machines, because this is the actual software that was used out there. Instead of doing that, which you'd think is going to happen in an audit, what they simply did was take an eraser and erase the things and said, oh, we just got.
Well, we're going to be erased because it's time for a break. Right back with Scott Creighton just said.
Arf, arf. The relationship between man and his trusty companion, the dog, goes back for thousands of years, but new evidence suggests we had domesticated a different friend even earlier. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back to tell you who it was.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Long before our ancestors tamed wild dogs and made them part of the family, they may have kept pet foxes. Although foxes are timid and skittish by nature, evidence suggests they can be tamed with a lot of love and patience, though it's not an easy task. Archaeologists working at a 16,000-year-old gravesite in northern Jordan recently found a fox carefully buried with his human owner. They believe the ancient pet lover had tamed the fox and made it a friend, and that he did it long before dogs came on the scene. In fact, the fox grave was 4,000 years older than any known grave containing a dog. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
Live Free Speech Radio, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Something wrong! Man, I smell something wrong. Something's wrong! I don't think I'll be around here long.
Junior Watson, something's wrong, and here's a man who knows something's wrong, so much so that he started a great blog. WillieLoman.wordpress.com is how you find it. It is called American Everyman, and we're talking with Scott Creighton. And Scott, this is old news. I mean, they've been stealing elections for a long time. The Collier brothers wrote a great book about it. They're from Florida, I think. We've had Victoria Collier on, one of their daughters, and
Harris has done a good deal of work on that.
And it's still like it didn't even happen. It's like Groundhog Day. Here we are all over again. But it's interesting, to your point. The people are getting ahead of the curve, and now they're starting to have to do the stealing a lot earlier and more openly and everything else.
Right.
What do you think? Are we at the tipping point yet? Are we near the tipping point? Are we past the tipping point? Do you think people are going to keep waking up if it doesn't happen this cycle? How do you feel?
I think that they're going to learn a lot from this election cycle, and that is Clinton. It either had to be Clinton or Bush, and that's just I think because of loyalty to what the two families have done for the business party of the United States. And you can go back all the way to Prescott Bush if you want to, as far as the Bush family. You can go back to Mena, Arkansas, if you want to, with Bill Clinton. Certainly, he was the first far right Democrat, business class Democrat that we had, and so attention must be paid. And of course, Hillary Clinton, they could have picked two people, not Trump and not Clinton, that nobody knew about. They had a little bit of background someplace, and they could have made them the next,
You mean like Obama?
Like Obama, exactly. Like an Obama on the Democratic side, and maybe a Romney or somebody up out of nowhere on the Republican side. They could have brought those two people up, and they would have been much easier. They wouldn't have had to fix anything, because really, it's like the Goldman Sachs CEO said. When you have a Bush or a Clinton, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. The thing that happened this time was Sanders and of course Trump, but Trump was just such a runaway train from the beginning that they couldn't fix it. There's no way they could have fixed it and made it believable. In this case, in the Sanders case, if you pay close attention, it's not believable. It's actually extremely outrageous what they've done as far as voter suppression, as far as disenfranchisement, and as far as just flat out stealing votes. But I think the whole thing came down to this cycle. They picked two really unlikable people. Trump, say whatever you think about him, he's got some high negatives as far as the polling is concerned, obviously, and so does Hillary Clinton, even higher negatives. They picked two people that are really unpopular, and it makes you kind of wonder why.
Wait, clarity. Who's the they? The people or the oligarchs?
The oligarchs, the ones who set them up.
I don't think they picked Trump. They tried to throw everything at him. I don't think they didn't.
I think they did pick Trump. I think they picked Trump to deflect all the attention from the panel of 17 Republicans that they had. Not a single one of them was active. Rubio might have been at least passable, but in the end, I think it was
not. Forget about it. The Rubio was forget about it.
Well, he could have been at least passable. I mean, he could have been at least he could have looked a little bit more respectable on the.
Look, a lot of them could have looked good, but Rubio now evil baby.
Evil baby. Well, Jeb Bush is the same thing, but they couldn't outperform.
Jeb Bush, evil middle-aged guy.
Right, and a lineage of evil that's just like Cthulhu. I mean, in its stature. So I think what happened basically was this time around, I think they've learned a lesson, and that is they can't let somebody like a Trump or they can't let somebody like a Sanders go as far as they have. They can't even let them get started. I think that they're gonna really make a mistake if they try to fix the general election. I think they're just going to have to let that ride as best they can and count the votes as evenly as fairly as they can. I think that the trick they've used the last couple of elections during the Obama cycle is they rigged the primaries so that they've got someone that's not really likable on the party ticket that they want to lose. And in this case, it could be Hillary Clinton, but I think, unfortunately, it's going to be Donald Trump. He's going to continue to say things that can be misconstrued. He'll deliberately say them. And I think he'll lose a little bit of the party was starting to come, together over there. But then he said a few things. They've blown them all out of proportion. And so now they're kind of splintering again. They're getting that. At the same time, they're going to suppose.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Listen, in my experience, the demarcation is the convention. Okay. I don't know if you remember back in '88, H.W. Bush was an evil, stupid joke. Okay. What? He was the only thing that could propel him into office is that, the Dukakis turned out to be just a stupid joke, a good natured, but not evil, but stupid joke. Everything changed for H.W. at the convention. When he came in there and he delivered that speech, it was the speech of his life, turned the whole thing around. I could tell right then and there it was all over. We got a lot of time yet. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, they try. I think they're trying to do the same thing with Hillary. That supposed foreign policy speech. I did a write up on that. Everyone came out saying, "Oh, it's the best thing since FDR. It's the best thing since Martin Luther King. Oh, it's a wonderful one." It was horrible. I thought it was horrible.
She has so much exposure on foreign policy. She should pray that nobody wants to bring it up at all. Right. Everything is not just a major failure, a major deadly failure.
Catastrophic failure. I mean, but of course she's talking about Iran as if she started that whole process going down the road towards reconciliation and signing the Iran nuclear agreement. Of course, that's a joke because Iran never wanted nukes in the first place. And if they didn't sign it, then the P5+1, the other nations of the P5+1 would have signed it. And the only one sitting out there who's sulking in the corner would have been the United States. And our businesses would have been left out of the pie and of the deal in Iran. So there was no way our businesses were going to do that. And we would have looked stupid. But of course, Hillary Clinton wants to take credit. And that's the only thing that she can hang her hat on and say that was even mildly successful while she was Secretary of State. And she had nothing to do with it.
And then on the other side of the balance sheet, you've got Ukraine, Honduras, Libya, Syria, and God knows what else. I mean, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Those are just the real glare.
An attempted color revolution in Russia, an attempt at what's that Pussy Riot thing? That whole
psyop. Yeah.
Right.
Did we talk about that on this show? Because remember after Charlie Hebdo with all this free speech crap that was going down in France? Mais je suis Charlie, oh, great. Free speech, great. Evil Russia, no free speech. Great France, free speech, good. When are we going to invite Pussy Riot to come do their act on the altar at Notre Dame? Because we're so much better than them. When are we going to come invite them to New York City to do their crappy act on the altar of St. Patrick's Cathedral, where New York's finest march by in kilts on every St. Patrick's Day?
Right.
They'll get their heads cracked open.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll probably blame that on Trump, on Putin, too. And while we're at it, let's make it a trifecta. Let's get them here to New York to do their crappy act at a trifecta. Let's go to a mosque and a Jewish temple and a Catholic church. How about that? Pussy Riot. Come on down.
An ultra-Orthodox Jewish temple.
Come on down, Pussy Riot. We're so much better than the Russians.
Right.
You can do your act here, and you won't get arrested like you were arrested in Moscow.
So she was a complete failure as far as her foreign policy. Look at the state of affairs in Honduras. Look at the state of affairs in Haiti. Don't forget Haiti. Billions of dollars.
That's a big one.
Billions of dollars given to Haiti from all people all over the world. And what does she do? She creates this big fund and puts her husband in charge of figuring out how to spend it. There are people dying of cholera in Haiti. It was so bad, a cholera epidemic breaks out. People are still living in huts down there. People are still displaced. People are still homeless. And, the billionaires are making tons of money off those billions of dollars, and those billions of dollars are spent. I mean, that's a nightmare. She was a nightmare as a Secretary of State. She'll be even, and that's to say nothing about her emails, and she'll be even worse.
I gotta tell you, I love them Haitian babes, I tell you.
He loves some Haitian interns. So she's just been horrible. That's why I said there's no way she can be president. But
She put the women of Libya. She put the women of Libya under the burqa. Some feminists, because feminism begins and ends at home. Nobody has got women covered like Hillary. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Scott Creighton for our last segment just after this.
Easy.
All right, good friends. Coming down the home stretch with Scott Creighton at American Everyman. That is his blog. You get there by going to willieloman.wordpress.com. Spell that out for us, Scott.
Willie Loman is WILLYLOMAN.wordpress.com.
Named after the famous character in the Death of a Salesman play, like Death of the Middle Class, Death of the United States. Anyway, all right, Scott, before we continue, it is, after all, primary night for New Jersey and California and Puerto Rico for the Republicans, too. You got any info yet on what's happening?
Republicans on Puerto Rico, that was March 6th. And believe it or not, Rubio won that by a landslide. But Jersey, right now, it's looking like 5% of the votes are in, and Clinton is winning on the Democratic side, 27,000 to 19,000. It's a 58 to 41 split there. And on the Republicans, obviously, Trump is winning. Kasich is bringing up second place, and Cruz is in third with 0 delegates. So, but right now, it looks
Cruz
like,
was scary, no?
Yeah, Ted Cruz was.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
God told him in a meeting while he was on his knees with some televangelist in an office someplace. God spoke to him and said, "You're going to be president." So,
president at a bridge club. But anyway, look, and then I got this guy Trump. He's like a bull in a china shop. He shoots off one thing. He says on stage to Jeb, "The weapons of mass destruction was a lie, and your brother's administration knew it." Was like, a week later, gone, bye-bye. And then what happens? Then he goes, I don't want to say, but, people think that other guy in that picture with Lee Harvey Oswald could have been your father. Well, I never. 1 week later, gone, bye-bye.
Yep. Well, and he backed out. He said he was never going to back out. And then 3 days after that exchange, he's gone. He says, "I've decided I'm out of here." Even though God told him, in the back room someplace, a smoky back room, God told him he was going to be president. I guess he figured he had better plans than God, and so he walked out.
Listen, people don't always hear God correctly. Okay?
That's right. Well, God could have been lying to him. He could have just been straight up lying to him.
Well, I don't know about that, but sometimes people got, they have an ego and they don't listen to God the right way. Like, for instance, God, Uncle Sam, told Saddam Hussein, "Listen, your instructions are to invade Iran and then to wait."
Right.
And he thought it meant Kuwait, so. So people don't always hear correctly.
No, people don't hear God correctly. Sometimes they're not listening close enough. Sometimes they got their own things in their mind.
Because remember, we didn't invade Iraq because they invaded Iran. We didn't have sanctions against Iraq because they invaded Iran. None of that stuff. No, because he was our boy. That's our boy.
Right. They did it because he invaded Kuwait after we told him to invade Kuwait.
We told him it'd be okay if he invaded.
Yeah, go ahead. Go on down there. What'd you do? You invaded? I didn't say invade Kuwait. Oh, man.
I told you to wait, but, actually, I'm told, I have to get a copy of this book, but that in John Connolly's biography or I don't know if a guy wrote it with him or not, But I'm told Connolly says, and I've looked this part up, and it is true, Margaret Thatcher was over here in the States right after the invasion of Kuwait. And do you remember there was like a couple of weeks of equivocating? It was really weird. He didn't decide to go, this will not stand. That didn't come out for a couple of weeks after the invasion of Kuwait. Do you remember there was that gap?
Well, they let him go in and destroy a lot of the oil fields, didn't they? And it was like 2 or 3 weeks.
No, I don't think he destroyed the oil fields until it became clear they were going to try to get him out. But
no, I mean Saddam. They went in and wreaked a lot of havoc down in Kuwait, and there was nothing going on on our end for about 2 or 3 weeks, if I remember correctly.
That's right. And then all of a sudden, George Bush got spine in this. Will not stand. I'm told that it is written in John Connolly's biography that H.W. Bush was basically spanked by Margaret Thatcher, and probably loved it. They were in Colorado. And she said, "You're the leader of the free world. This cannot stand. We can't have these wogs invading countries. Be a man. Something like that happened. And then all of a sudden he comes out all, vim and vigor with other people's, kids getting killed and everything else. So.
Well, I think that he was supposed to actually once we got involved and we started pushing him back with bulldozers and burying him in the sand and all that. I thought, and from what I've read, the plan really was, at least from the military point of view, was they were going to push him all the way back and take Saddam then. But it was George H.W. Bush. He said no. And suddenly they stopped the bombing and they stopped everything, and they cut the Kurds loose, and they cut the people, the people who were rising up against him in Iraq. They cut them loose. They turned their backs on them and let Saddam do whatever he was going to do to them. So that whole thing, the Kuwait thing, was very strange for me.
Well, it makes sense actually when you think about it, because old HW probably was onto something. If you went all the way to Baghdad and created a power vacuum, you've got a very muscular Iran right on the border that just got done this horrible 8-year war with them, who could move right in there and then it would be all over.
And I think there's that aspect of it, but there's also the sanctions were very effective. The sanctions during the Clinton administration, before we finally invaded in 2003, were very effective. It weakened Iraq. Iraq was very powerful. Back in the Kuwait days and those days. And it took a little time to soften them up, I think. It was like Madeleine Albright saying, we killed 500,000 kids in Iraq with the sanctions, but we think it was worth it. I think it would have been a much more difficult fight in 90 or whenever it was that he was going in there in Kuwait. It would have been a much more difficult fight than it was in 2004.
Well, they certainly were much more softened up by the time his kid got into office, that's for sure. Madeleine Albright, the same woman who said there's a special place in hell for women who don't vote for Hillary, or other women, basically. And I thought that was very interesting. Who says the same thing? Basically, ISIS says the same thing. There's a special place in hell for women who don't wear Hillary's burqas.
Well, I think they have a special deal with Hillary to buy the burqas.
No, they don't buy them. ISIS is her official distributor for her and what's his name, Blumenthal. Her guy on the ground
Sidney Blumenthal.
Yeah. He's the one making all the deals. And it was like, Hillary, this is golden. Now that we got rid of Gaddafi and ISIS is in charge, all the women got to wear burqas. We're going to start selling burqas. We'll make a ton of money. Right. They're my friends. And guess what? They will distribute the burqas. We just give them to ISIS. ISIS will deliver anywhere. Europe, United States.
It's okay because she erased 30,000 of those emails where she's talking about the burqas and the special deal she was going to get when she was in Secretary of State. So she erased those, so it's no big deal.
ISIS delivers everywhere but Israel.
Right. Did you see the video in 2011 where she's sitting in front of a bunch of business people in the Green Zone in Baghdad, and she's saying, "Listen, Baghdad, the United States has to start looking at Baghdad as a business opportunity." Did you see that video?
Yeah. It's disgusting.
She's a and people were still being blown up in 2011. It was, we're still losing, I don't know how many soldiers a month to IEDs, and they're sitting there protected by these soldiers who are dying out there. She's talking about Iraq as a business opportunity.
It goes back to, listen, you mark my words, get your hands on a copy of the video of the first presidential debate in 2000 between George W. Bush and Al Gore. And I believe I counted where, they were asking dumbass, questions like, would you use the American military? And he said, so I'd use American military if American interests were involved. American interests. He said American interests something like 39 times in that debate. Okay. Will you or anybody listening, 512-646-1984, will all of you call in and hopefully unanimously agree and tell me what American interests are? What does it mean? American interests. He didn't say if the United States was going to be threatened, if the United States was under attack. No. I use American military to protect American interests. Yeah. What does that mean? The hell does that mean? 39 times, I think he said it. It means nothing and everything. It means that we go kill whoever we want.
Part of this, and just really quickly, because I know we got to go, but this is just a bit of her speech this foreign policy speech she's talking about. And this was how she opened the speech. And she's going on talking about, this is the third paragraph or something. She says, that's what I want to speak about today. The challenges we face in protecting our country and the choice at stake in this election. It's a choice between a fearful America that's less secure and less engaged in the world and a strong, confident America that leads to keep our country safe and our economy growing.
All right, neither of which is happening. And by the way, keep our country safe from who exactly?
Exactly, keep our country safe and our economy growing. Is that what we tell our soldiers? Is that what we tell the children of the soldiers and the fathers and the mothers who are out there? What are your parents doing overseas? Are they keeping America safe for democracy, the world safe for democracy? Are they keeping us safe here? Or are they making the economy strong for certain people in Wall Street? Is that what you tell your kids?
Who are we protecting America from? The last I checked, it wasn't since the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. I mean, who? What?
Well, Obama just said he just asked Russia not to bomb al-Nusra in Syria because al-Nusra is hanging out with our moderates and they're kind of getting along with our moderates and fighting Assad. Well, al-Nusra is Al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
That's Al-Qaeda. Sure. He just asked Russia last week not to stop bombing Al-Qaeda. These are the people that supposedly knocked down the Twin Towers, and Obama's saying, hey, please don't bomb these guys.
Yeah, they're our boys.
So what are we keeping them safe from?
And besides which, they are so slippery and slimy, we couldn't bomb them for years until Russia showed up.
Right.
Even though there's no trees, it's a desert, there's no clouds. You could read the license plates from the trucks from outer space with satellites, but we couldn't somehow find them. Anyway, listen, Scott Creighton, American Everyman, WillieLoman.wordpress.com. Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, great show. Thank you very much, friends, and we'll be back with you next week, next Thursday, actually, for another great show.